Devotion, it's one of those, it can be very draw dependent, the mirror sometimes, but at the same time, play skill definitely matters here. And Owen, despite the fact that he has 0 copies of Erebos in his main deck, he does have 3 copies of Erebos in his sideboard, and he has 3 copies of Dark Betrayal. So after board, he's actually a little bit better positioned than Tim, because Tim only can board up to 2 to Erebos, and he only has 2 copies of Dark Betrayal in his sideboard.
Yeah, those extra cards will give him slight advantages. There are things that he can use in the matchup. And I think worth noting is that you said Owen is a recent 2-time Grand Prix champion. One of those formats were Standard and Legacy, and when he won his Standard Grand Prix recently, that was with Mono Black Devotion.
Yeah, and I believe he did have to play a mirror in the top 8, and I know he tested a lot, I believe, with Paul Reitzel, who also played Mono Black Devotion. So you would have to imagine he's pretty cognizant of the mirror and what you need to do and what cards matter.
All right, so let's walk through. Mono Black Devotion is a deck with basically 8 4-ofs in the matchup. We'll kind of talk about, as we'll see, which ones are important in the Mono Black mirror. So the 8 cards, which basically Mono Black plays, are 4 creatures: Pack Rat, Night Veil Spectre, Desecration Demon, and Grey Merchant, and then 4 spells: Thoughtseize, Devour Flesh, Hero's Downfall, and Underworld Connections. For this matchup, generally I've heard it said that the most important cards are the Pack Rat and the Night Veil Spectre.
Yeah, Pack Rat, Night Veil Spectre, Underworld Connections, obviously a pretty important card too. Thoughtseize, very important early on. Thoughtseize is one of those cards that, in general, it's very important early on, but later in the game can actually be, a dead draw. So it's one of those tough cards. You can never board it out, but you also don't want to draw it later in the game. But yeah, nevertheless, that's going to be an important card because it's similar to like the fairy mirrors where you can get draws where you're like turn 1 Thoughtseize, turn 2 Pack Rat. They used to go turn 1 Thoughtseize, turn 2 Bitter Blossom. Kind of a similar feel to the game there, where you just feel like you're on such a you're so far behind when your opponent does that to you. But yeah, definitely Pack Rat's one of those cards that I think people weren't really sure what to make of it when it first came onto the scene about a year ago, and then all of a sudden at the Pro Tour, you see the Japanese sort of showed up with the Mono Black Devotion deck that played 2 copies of Pack Rat, and then basically at GP Albuquerque, Owen, Turtenwald, and Paul Reitzel said, nope, this card's probably the best card in the deck, just play 4.
Yeah,
and then Zvi Mauschwitz writes an article about how you use Pack Rat, and all of a sudden, everyone realizes Pack Rat is actually one of the best cards in the format.
Yeah, when it first came out, I would say Pack Rat was a little bit of a despised card in Limited, but people said, well, while we hate this, it's not a constructed card still, though.
Yeah.
It may be the best limited card in Return to Ravnica. I think not even just it may be. It probably is the best card in Limited in Return to Ravnica, but I don't think it was necessarily true that people expected it to be a constructed powerhouse as well.
Well, the thing about it is that nobody really knew how to incorporate it into a deck. I mean, it's not really good in a control deck out of the sideboard, and an aggressive deck, it just doesn't make that much sense. But then you get this card like Underworld Connections, which helps you fuel the Pack Rat, and all of a sudden, the deck just comes alive. So, looks like both players are ready to draw their opening 7. It looks like Owen is happy with his hand. He's going to be on the play because he's the higher seed. So, looks like Tim is deciding if he wants to mulligan. Again, this is a very tough match. You have to make sure that I think you have to mulligan aggressively at times because there's certain cards that just don't matter that much. So looks like Tim is going to take a mulligan, and he's going to go down to 6 cards. Owen is again comfortable with his 7, leaning back, feeling pretty good. Mono Black Devotion mirror. He's got to be comfortable. He's on the play right here. That's also very huge in this matchup as well.
So being on the play is just it lets you make the first Pack Rat. It lets you get the Thoughtseize off.
Yeah, it lets you cast Thoughtseize first. It lets you cast Pack Rat first. I mean, obviously, Pack Rat, you don't want to expose your Pack Rat to removal, but if you can go turn 1 Thoughtseize and clear the way and just start getting that Pack Rat active, if you can untap with Pack Rat, I mean, it's very hard to beat that. So
yeah, I mean, I think especially in this matchup, what is the scariest part about Pack Rat is if you can make the second Pack Rat, you kind of have unlocked the mirror. All these decks, at least in the main, have only 1-for-1 removal. So once you do have the first Pack Rat out and the second one, it's unlikely your opponent will be able to kill all of them.
Yeah, because it's not like they have that many ways to actually kill a Pack Rat. Obviously, they have Hero's Downfall. Some of them play Doomblade. Doomblade obviously isn't a target. Phyrexia's Cure can get turned off at a certain point depending on how many Pack Rats are in play. So yeah, once that Pack Rat gets activated, it's pretty tough to deal with. And Tim does have a turn 1 Thoughtseize, but Owen's hand is pretty good. He's got the pack right there. He also has the Underworld connections.
Yeah, so we saw Owen with no Thoughtseize of its own. Tim was able to Thoughtseize back. He prevented the pack rat, from the turn 2 pack rat from Owen. Owen had a 3-land hand with, as you said, Underworld connections, pack rat, and 2 copies of Devour Flesh. Pack rat, though, was taken by Tim.
Yeah, and the Devour Flesh is obviously huge because now Tim can't play a turn 2 pack rat. So Owen's going to be able to turn that play off and then play an Underworld Connections on his turn, and then he'll still be able to deal with a creature on Tim's turn the following turn and draw a card with Underworld Connections.
Right, and so we see Owen going again for that turn 3 Underworld Connections. He drew a Pharika's Cure. So Owen with a Cure and 2 Devour Fleshes is pretty prepared to deal with creatures right now. We're kind of on that mono-black strategy of draw some cards, kill some creatures.
Yeah, he's got a Phyrexian's Cure, which, not great in this matchup, but he can actually kill Mutavaults, which could be relevant. So Owen, despite getting Thoughtseized and losing his pack rat, still in pretty good shape just because of that Underworld Connections. Here we see Tim Rivera is going to tap 3 and play a Nightveil Spectre. That will likely fall to a Devour Flesh.
Yeah, Owen starts by drawing a card with the Underworld Connections. He hits a land off it. And as you said, Devour Flesh will take down Nightveil Spectre.
Yeah, and the key thing about the Phyrexian's Cure that Owen drew was if Tim does try to perhaps play a Mutavault and a Nightveil Spectre this turn, and use the Mutavault as a protection from the Devour Flesh, Owen can respond by Phyrexian's Curing the Mutavault.
So because that Tim does make Mutavault on turn 4, he passes the turn back as opposed to casting Desecration Demon there, probably as protection against the second Devour Flesh that he knows is in Owen's hand.
Yeah, so I think that Phyrexian's Cure play could actually come into play pretty soon.
Yep, so we see Owen trying for a Nightveil Spectre was Owen able to hit a Devour Flesh from Tim. Owen activates Mutavault so that he loses the Mutavault and not the Nightveil Spectre, but Tim has the response in another Devour Flesh, so he'll get both creatures.
Yeah, so I think Owen's okay with that. He's still up on cards because of the Underworld Connections, and Tim just lost 2 of his removal spells, so...
And it looks like a Temple of Deceit from Tim scried a card to the top of his deck, which I believe may have been an Underworld Connections of his own. Certainly, to me, that would seem what Tim needs to hit in order to not get
Tim needs
to not run out of cards.
He needs a pack rat here, or Underworld Connection is obviously going to help as well. So Owen does the same thing. He scries and keeps the card on top of his library. And looks like Tim did draw that Underworld Connection, and that is going to get cast this turn.
All right, so now both players on card parity, drawing 2 cards a turn. Is the way you break this then to get a third connections going, or are we playing? It's about pack rat now.
Yeah, it's usually always going to be about pack rat. Eventually, there's going to be a point where someone draws the pack rat and has plenty of mana up. And here comes the Desecration Demon. Let's see if Tim does have a Hero's Downfall. He already used 2. He already used 2 copies of Devour Flesh, so...
Yeah, he does have a demon of his own, so he may try that as a blocker. It does not look like he has the removal spell at the moment. We see that's true, a Desecration Demon of his own, leaving up Mutavault.
So let's see, are we going to see the Devour Flesh play here?
Well, Tim has the Mutavault up, so the Devour Flesh play is more likely to hit the land than the demon.
Because Owen does have the Phyrexian's Cure, so in response, he could just kill the Mutavault.
All right, so we'll see. Owen's going to go ahead and start with Hero's Downfall for the demon.
He's just going to Hero's Downfall it. And now the Desecration Demon trigger starts, but Tim does not want to sack his Mutavault.
No. So we see 4 mana and a second demon now for Owen. And this could get pretty big pretty quickly. Tim's going to have to hit a removal spell, and he finds the first one in Devour Flesh.
So he has a Devour Flesh for 1 demon, but 2 demons can end the game pretty quickly. And especially because Tim's going to be, pinging himself every turn to draw a card. So
exactly.
Yeah, between Thoughtseize and Underworld Connections, you can actually lose a fair amount of life with this deck.
All right, so the first Devour Flesh is cast. That will take care of 1 demon. It does put Owen up to 25. And Tim will go for another card, trying to find that second removal spell. And he does not find the spell, but he does find a pack rat.
Yeah, so is it going to be enough here? Desecration Demon comes down. Owen still has the Phyrexian's Cure.
So he has a Devour Flesh and a Phyrexian's Cure.
And unfortunately, I'm not sure he wants to cast it. He might have to, but he's going to give Tim 6 life.
Yeah, and the problem is that's the only way he could deal with Desecration Demon is by Devour Fleshing it.
Yeah, so he's fine
breaks
with giving
parity.
Tim 6 life, and he's basically just going to fog for the turn, more or less, but he will deal with that demon. Ooh, Tim draws an Erebos. He has a pack rat as well, so Erebos, pack rat, that can get turned on.
Yeah, well, the question is, Erebos is a really strong card in the mirror, but would you rather have an Erebos or just another pack rat? It is important once Tim makes the pack rat to have two of them so that he doesn't get a pack rat for Rika's Cured, as we already know Owen has.
Yeah, I think he has some time. He might. Looks like he just wants to cast Erebos here.
All right,
But,
so Mutavault will try to attack. It does draw out the Farika's Cure from Owen.
And Owen's going to gain 2 life here. It looks like Tim also has a Gray Merchant there.
Yeah, he's had a Gray Merchant for most of the game. He has not found a window in which to cast it. We see Pack Rat cast by Tim with 3 mana up, so he now will get to start making Pack Rats.
Yeah, Owen drew another Underworld Connections, and now he drew a Mutavault off of that draw.
Yeah, so he's actually out of kill spells now that he used the Farika's Cure on the Mutavault and used the Devour Flesh on the Desecration Demon this last turn. Owen very quickly digging through his deck to either find a kill spell or a pack rat of his own.
Yeah, and Owen just has lands in his hand here, so the pack rat could start to get out of control. But let's see. Looks like Owen's going to declare his attack phase.
And we'll see whether or not Tim sacrifices something to it. There is a danger if he takes 6 here that Tim will have to watch out for Gray Merchant of Asphodel from Owen's deck.
Gray Merchant's one of those cards that could end the game relatively quickly for Owen, but
Tim's going to make a pack rat. That was a discard of the Erebos in his hand.
Okay, so Erebos is gone, pack rat now. There is a pack rat token in play, and he still has that Gray Merchant in his hand. So he has a bit of a life cushion if he wants to cast it, but he might just choose to start discarding it. Let's see, he could draw a card off Underworld Connections.
Right, so right now he has Temple of Deceit and Gray Merchant of Asphodel in his hand. He has an Underworld Connections in play. He is a land short of being able to make a pack rat and cast Gray Merchant.
Yeah, I think you want to draw a card here, and then I think you want to draw a card here and just make a rat. I think making rats it's probably better just to make 2 rats. But let's see what Tim decides to do.
And then you have to start sacking the rats to the demon.
You could sack a rat. You could sack a Mutavault. You have a couple of options, but I think Tim is going to attack for 4, dropping Owen to 20. Oh, he's just going to play the Gray Merchant. He just wants some life.
He's a little worried about his own life total. So Gray Merchant, remember the pack rat token does actually have a mana cost. So Gray Merchant will drain for 6. That will put life totals to a more even 14 and 11. Still in favor of Owen, but much closer than at the beginning of the turn.
Yeah, so he gave himself a little bit of life cushion. Now he won't die to a top deck Gray Merchant, so that's good.
And so Owen, behind on the board, but having so many cards, he draws a Thoughtseize, taps Underworld Connections, draws a Swamp, goes for a 3rd card, and draws a Gray Merchant of his own.
So good thing Tim played that Gray Merchant that turn, because otherwise he would have died to Owen's top deck Gray Merchant. So
yeah,
Owen still, he still has a lot of play here. Let's see. He's going to declare attack phase, and Gray Merchant is going to get sacrificed to the trigger, and Mutavault will come in.
This is for 2 that puts Tim down to 9. Owen's Gray Merchant right now only drains for 8, so he could put Tim down to 1. We will see if he makes that move.
I think there's a risk that he could lose it to Thoughtseize. So he's going to Thoughtseize first to make sure see what he's dealing with.
Tim has
just a land.
Yep, just a temple. So now Owen will make Gray Merchant. That counts up to 8. It is the 2 from Merchant, 2 from Demon, 2 from Connections, 2 from Connections. Tim goes to 1. Owen up to 18.
So 1, that means it turns off the Underworld Connection, so he's only going to get 1 draw this turn.
Yeah, and it was a Swamp, so no help there. Owen with 2 Mutavaults and a Gray Merchant and a Desecration Demon has plenty of attackers. He has 4 of them. Tim, with 2 cards in hand and a Mutavault, will pretty much have to stop attacking so that he can keep enough blockers back for everything.
Yeah, this is a tough spot for Tim. Owen does have 4 attackers next turn. He can discard 2 cards to make 2 more rats if he chooses, but he's going to have to sacrifice one of them to tap down the Desecration Demon because he doesn't have any flyers to block. So Tim's just going to pass the turn. Owen's going to basically get 3 draws here to try to lock this game up. He draws a Night Veil Spectre with 1. Let's see if he can draw another Gray Merchant. It's a Thoughtseize, and then can't make out the last card, but it looks like a Devour Flesh. So, is that going to be enough?
I mean, he may not have a lethal swing this turn, but he can still put a lot of pressure on.
So yeah, it looks like he's going to activate a rat.
Yeah, I think this may be. Now Tim uses. Or it looks like he's getting ready to sack that Mutavault to the Desecration Demon.
Yep.
So he's using the Mutavault to discard and create a pack rat. Owen is responding at the moment. If he wants to devour flesh, this is the window where Owen should cast it, so the pack rats are as small as possible.
But if he does devour flesh, he gives Tim basically. He basically
Gives him
turns on that underworld connections again and gives him more
he
time
gives
to
him
draw
extra
Grey
life.
Merchant.
And Owen
Yeah.
paused there to consider casting the Devour Flesh, but as you said, he decided to go against it. Keeping Tim at 1 life was probably more important than removing that blocker.
Yeah, he's fine with just getting another flyer out there. It's another card that Tim just can't deal with right now. So he gets 1 draw to find a way to deal with it. Looks like he might have drawn a Night Veil Spectre.
Yep, so we see Night Veil Spectre. Pack rat count is now up to 4 on Tim's side of the board. But he is still a little bit under the gun here. Owen has a 8/8 Desecration Demon that's flying that Tim really can't answer. He's just going to have to sacrifice a creature to every turn.
Yeah, Owen has 5 creatures. Tim has 4 pack rats, so he can make a 5th creature, but unfortunately none of them have flying. So he has 2 flyers that he has to contend with, one of which he can tap down, being Desecration Demon. However, Owen is drawing 3 cards a turn, so eventually it seems like Owen's just going to be able to punch through here, but Tim's going to need to. Tim might get 1 more turn if he did draw a Night Veil Spectre or a removal spell, but. Yeah.
Right, but the problem, and exactly like you said, Owen is at 16 and drawing 3 cards per turn. All it will take is for Owen to draw 1 kill spell at this point to make these put his lethal attack through, or 1 Grey Merchant. It seems unlikely that Owen's not going to hit one of those next turn.
Yeah, so here's an interesting play from Tim. He attacks with one of the pack rat, which is going to get double blocked here with a Mutavault and a Grey Merchant. The Grey Merchant will die, and now Night Veil Spectre comes down. So.
Yeah, and a really heads-up play by Owen. Normally that block would not be as good because Tim could discard a card to make a pack rat, to make it large enough. However, Owen recognizes that if Tim makes that play, then he will have no flyer to block Night Veil Spectre.
And there's a Grey Merchant.
There we go.
So
Owen finds the card off the second connections, and he will take game 1.
So Owen Turtenwald, on the strength of double Underworld connections, takes game 1 and moves on 1-0 in this matchup. And we're back to the booth because it's time for trivia. For those of you who follow us at home, whenever we do one of these things, we always do 3 trivia questions, 1 for 6 months of premium, 1 for 12 months of premium, and 1 for 1 month of premium.
For
or
3 months
of premium.
Yeah, so it progresses as we go through each top 8, and there will be plenty of top 8s today, so plenty of chances to win Star City Games Premium. This is our first question during the top 8 of our Standard Open. This is for 3 months of Star City Premium. For those of you who just joined us, we were wondering, we're looking for the name of the deck. We're wondering in the Standard top 8, what deck has placed 4 copies into our top 8, including 1/2 of the entire bracket.
It's a tough one.
It's a tough
It's
one.
a tough one.
So if you know the answer, do tweet it to us. Make sure that you have the hashtag SCG Premium, which you see at the bottom of your screen. It'll have to be on your tweet for you to be considered for the contest. After all the top 8 matches have finished, we will announce the winner for 3 months of Star City Premium.
So looking at that matchup, we thought that Tim might have a slight advantage game 1 because he had that Erebos, but it ended up not even mattering because he just discarded the pack rat. And really, Owen just drew 2 Underworld connections, and it was just too much for Tim to overcome. Owen was able to get his own Underworld connections online much earlier than Tim, and allowed him to draw a second one to really press that advantage.
Yeah, I like you said that Erebos is a great card in the mirror, but sometimes your best card in the mirror is already a 4 of in the main deck, and setting the bar at pack rat is a pretty high bar. So sometimes Erebos, and sometimes every card in your deck is just better as a pack rat.
Yeah, so looking at the sideboards here, you see Owen has 3 copies of Lifebane Zombie, 3 copies of Dark Betrayal, 2 copies of Farika's Cure, 3 copies of Erebos, God of the Dead, and 4 Duress.
Yeah, so the decks are eerily similar here. Remember that they're 59 cards the same in the main. Their sideboards are different by 3 cards.
Yeah, so basically Tim shaved one of the Dark Betrayals and one of the Erebos for 2 copies of Doomblade to give himself a little more of an advantage against creature decks. So
yes, and Owen has an extra Farika's Cure in the main deck. But so let's go over what cards we like to begin with here. Dark Betrayal seems like an obvious card for the mirror match. Everything your opponent's playing is black. I imagine you'd want to kill black creatures.
Yeah, Dark Betrayal is definitely an auto-include, along with Erebos. Erebos and Dark Betrayal are the 2 cards I think that We're going to see both players want in their main deck now. The real question is duress. Now, how much do you want to bring? How much do you value duress in this matchup? The real tricky thing with duress is obviously two of the more important cards in this matchup are Pack Rat and Night Veil Spectre. However, being able to take an Underworld connection along with being able to take a removal spell so that you can clear the path for those creatures is also important. At the same time, the top deck duress late in the game isn't very effective. So I'm not sure how much you want duress in this matchup. Duress is really ideal against a control deck like Blue-White Control or Esper or Blue-White-Red. But in the mirror, I'm not so sure how effective it is going to be.
Well, I think duress is live here, which is why, as you said, there's reasons to consider boarding it in. However, the most important cards in this matchup tend to be the ones you can't duress. When you look at it, Night Veil Spectre is very powerful. Pack Rat is once again, as we've said, probably the most important card in this mirror. I think duress is good if you can play it turn 1 and hit an Underworld Connections. Then you'll be really happy with the card. Outside of that, I don't see you being particularly happy with the card. Maybe you can put it on the play, because if you play Duress, get rid of their removal spell, and then play Pack Rat, once again, that Thoughtseize into Bitter Blossom or Duress into Pack Rat effect could happen.
Yeah, my guess is that Devour Flesh will just get upgraded to Dark Betrayal, and Freakus Cure, which obviously isn't that effective in this matchup, probably comes out as well. So if I had to guess, I would say you'd see a swap of 4 Devour Flesh, 2 Freakus Cure for just the 3 Dark Betrayal, 3 Erebos. But beyond that, I'm not sure if you can really afford to bring in those duresses, because every other card in the deck is just so valuable. You can't bring out Thoughtseize, can't bring out Pack Rat, can't bring out Underworld Connection or Night Veil Spectre, and Hero's Downfall is obviously a must.
Yeah. Let me throw out an idea here with the boarding out of Devour Flesh. Is it possible that you'll see players, whether or not they choose to board out Devour Flesh or Hero's Downfall, based on whether or not they're on the play or the draw? For example, if you're on the play, a Hero's Downfall can answer a turn 2 Pack Rat, whereas when you're on the draw, that answer actually doesn't work.
Well, I don't. The thing is, though, it's not like you're taking it out for a non-removal spell. You're effectively swapping it for Dark Betrayal, which is a much more effective removal spell and much cheaper than any of the removal spells that you're boarding it out for. So I'm not so sure that would matter so much.
Well, you're boarding some out for Ereboses, right? And those aren't actually removal spells.
I think again, maybe you can board out. You'd have to start thinking about boarding out the Desecration Demon or Grey Merchant, though, and I'm not sure I'd really want to board out any of those things. So it's tough to say. It's possible that maybe you want to board out keep in 1 copy of Devour Flesh or a couple copies, just to, if you're on the draw, to make sure you have a way to deal.
Right. I'm saying maybe play a split of Devours and Heroes Downfalls only when on the draw, so that you don't lose to a turn 2 Pack right on the play.
Yeah, I could see that maybe being an option there.
All right, well, we are underway. Tim Rivera and Owen Turtenwald, both players just starting out on Swamps, so no hand disruption. And we'll see Tim with the play, the turn 2 Pack Rat, and we'll see if Owen has the answer.
So yeah, Owen looks like they didn't have a Dark Betrayal, but he has a Pack Rat of his own, and I think Tim does have a Hero's Downfall, so he can choose to just. Oh, he does have Devour Flesh, so Devour Flesh takes out the Pack Rat.
Now, if I remember anything about Limited, is that even when both players have Pack Rat, the first Pack Rat is the one that matters. But huge play here. Tim did not have the 3rd land for first Pack Rat to make Pack Rat copies of his own.
And he drew a Dark Betrayal, so he will be able to deal with the Night Veil Spectre. But it looks like he didn't draw a 3rd land yet, so that Pack Rat is still vulnerable.
Yep, so he Dark Betrayals the Night Veil Spectre, swings his Pack Rat, activates Mutavault to make sure Pack Rat gets across for an additional damage. That'll put Owen down to 18, but Owen recovers with a Devour Flesh, and he's back on the Pack Rat plan.
So Owen's starting to capitalize on Tim's mana screw here. Tim did finally draws a 3rd land here. Let's see what he wants to do. Is we're just going to see a Hero's Downfall here. Yep.
All right, so players trading back and forth. And now it'll be about which player probably can stick in Underworld Connections, and that's going to be Owen. On his 4th land, he taps 3 for Underworld Connections, taps Connections to get another land, makes a land drop, and continues.
So interesting here, Owen could have played a Night Veil Spectre and started attacking next turn, but he chose to draw cards with Underworld Connections. So let's see what Tim does here.
Yeah, I think it's possible that the game has turned a little bit of a corner. The players aren't really aggroing their creatures anymore, and Owen decided it was time to start going for the late game.
Yeah, but getting a hit with Night Veil Spectre is really good in this matchup.
If you can get it, getting a hit with Night Veil Spectre can be a lot better than playing in Underworld Connections.
Okay, so Owen does have that Duress here. He's going to Duress, and that's going to hit Underworld Connections. and you see a Gray Merchant and a Pack Rat in Tim's hand. And it looks like Owen does have a Thoughtseize, so he could go after that Pack Rat now, which it looks like he is.
All right. And yeah, yep, Thoughtseize will take care of the Pack Rat, leaving Tim with just a Gray Merchant, and then Owen does make the Night Veil Spectre.
So great turn there for Owen, although Tim will get at least 2 draws here.
Well, and I really like how Owen played that. So last turn, as you said, he had the option between Night Veil and Underworld Connections. By playing the Connections, Owen was able to use double removal spell, or double discard spell, to basically clear the way for the Night Veil Spectre. So now he gets to have the best of both worlds. He gets the Connections and the Night Veil.
And Tim just had a Duress there, and you could see Duress just missing because Owen just had a Gray Merchant in his hand. So, but Tim did have an answer for the Night Veil Spectre. So Owen's going to use Connections again to draw a card. Draws another Duress here, and Duress is going to be dead again. So
both are just firing off these blank Duresses.
And now Gray Merchant's going to come down and drain Tim for 4.
Yeah, all right, so we have 15-15 our life totals. Owen is, both players basically with empty hands. What you see is Owen is up on land count, and he has a 2-4 in play. Other than that, both players are at very similar situations. I think Tim's at a little bit of a disadvantage that his Underworld Connections is on a Mutavault instead of a Swamp.
Yeah, so Tim's going to cast Devour Flesh to deal with the Gray Merchant while Owen's Mutavault is tapped, and swing in with that Mutavault.
All right, so 14-17. They're kind of on a stalemate here. What's going to break this? You know, what are we drawing toward?
Pack Rat.
All right, it's just Pack Rat.
Yeah, Pack Rat or a second Underworld Connections for one of them.
All right, Thoughtseize takes out the Gray Merchant from Tim's hand. Tim is left with just a Duress. Owen passes the turn. You have to think that this Duress is going to miss right now if he decides to go for it.
And the thing is, and this is kind of where I don't love Duress in this matchup. He did get
he did hit. All right.
Again, it's really not going to do that much at this point, at this stage of the game. But
to be fair, at this stage in the game, nothing other than Pack Rat does that much. Isn't that to a point? You know.
Well, no, a second Underworld Connections is obviously huge too, and even Desecration Demon, like just threats. If you could just start casting threats, it's fine. They can't always draw removal spells. So.
All right. Well, Tim hits in with a Mutavault again. Owen draws twice for the turn. He has a Thoughtseize.
It's just a land, so that clears the path for Night Veil Spectre to come down.
9-9, thanks to a hit with Mutavault, and now Owen does have the Night Veil Spectre.
Yeah, and between Thoughtseize and Underworld Connections, the life totals are pretty low for both players here, despite them casting Gray Merchants.
Yep, Tim drawing an extra card. It is just another land. He will respond with a Night Veil Spectre of his own and pass back to Owen. Both players just playing off the top.
So Owen gets 1 draw for his turn, and now we're going to see Underworld Connections draw him another card.
All right, 8-8. Life totals are getting pretty low, and now we see Erebos, God of the Dead.
Erebos, great draw there for Owen. It is turned on because he has more than 5 devotion, and Tim draws yet another land for the turn, and he draws off the Connections.
All right, this draw is going to be pretty important for him, and he hits. He certainly hits.
He hits somewhat. The thing is, though, he still has to contend with an Erebos here. And,
right. Some of these rats may be on chump block duty.
Yeah, Owen can activate Erebos to draw a card, then he's going to draw a card for his turn, then he can activate Underworld Connections to draw another card. So he's likely going to find a removal spell or a Gray Merchant, and let's see what happens here.
How much does Owen have to worry about Tim drawing a Gray Merchant if Owen goes too low on life?
That's obviously a concern, but I don't think Owen's not going to draw the cards. I mean, there's just
going to go into it
anyway.
Live
Live draws for him.
Yep. All right, so he takes 2 life to draw and 1 extra card off Erebos, untaps.
Unfortunately for Owen, he just drew 2 lands there. One of them is a Mutavault, but he's going to draw a 3rd card here, and it's another land. So now he is in danger of just dying to Gray Merchant again.
Does he go 1 card deeper?
I think at this point you might have to, just because. You're going to die to Gray Merchant no matter what. But,
he's a start with Erebos.
So Erebos is going to come over. Mutavault is just going to get activated and then chump block there.
Yeah, like that. He activates Mutavault and then before damage discards a card to make a Pack Rat.
Yeah. So now basically, I think Owen does have to. Well, he has 2 Mutavaults to block along with the Night Veil Spectre. There's 2 rats in play, and the Mutavault could attack. So yeah, Owen does have to draw a card here to try to draw an answer.
And he does another Swamp.
Yeah. So he just has to pass the turn back. At 3 life.
He has to hope that Tim does not draw a Gray Merchant here. Wow. He doesn't, but he does draw an Erebos.
Tim draws an Erebos here. And these Pack Rats can just come over now And Owen's going to be forced to chump block here, I think.
Yeah, with 2 pack rats in play, Owen has up to 3 blockers. He could actually take a hit off the Night Veil Spectre if Tim swings them both.
Yeah, I think Tim's going to leave that Night Veil Spectre back to block. Tim can still draw a card for his turn with the Underworld connections. He chose not to.
So we see 2 pack rats swing. They are both lethal attackers thanks to the fact that Tim could discard a card. So Owen's going to have to block both of them, and it looks like the Mutavaults step up to the task.
And pack rat, there'll be a pack rat activation to save both of his pack rats. He discarded Erebos to it. And now Tim has 3/3/3 pack rats in play, and Owen only has 2 creatures. So Owen draws for the turn. It's a swamp.
Now on that turn, Tim never used his Underworld connections. Had he used it main phase, what if the top card of his deck right now was a Gray Merchant? You know, then he could have drawn the extra card and then cast it last turn instead of doing any of the other plays.
Yeah, surprising that he didn't use the Underworld connections there. Maybe he was just afraid of going to 6, but yeah, it didn't matter. Owen Turtenwald just drew land and wasn't able to overcome those pack rats. So Tim Rivera evens up the match. Moving on to game 3 now, and Owen will be back on the play. But yeah, it's interesting because Owen just kind of got a little flooded. It definitely looked good for him when he drew that Erebos. He basically had 7 draws, I think, where he could have drawn either a removal spell or a Gray Merchant to sort of lock this game up, and just didn't come through for him.
All right, so we do have an update on the other side of the bracket for you. This is the matchup between James Redmond and Rob Minkus. This is the White Weenie with red deck versus the Mono Blue Devotion deck. Our single aggro deck in the format, the White Weenie deck, was successful 2-0, which moves James onto the semifinals. He will be playing a Revelation deck of one sort in the semifinals, and we were saying that was his most difficult matchup in the top 8. So now with the only opponents left, so he has this White Weenie deck. The only contenders left for him are Revelation decks and then Mono Black decks. You have to like the spot the White Weenie player's in.
Yeah, I think it's not bad. Again, I think a lot of it. White Weenie is always one of those decks to where it either looks amazing or it looks terrible. You know,
right?
It's one of those all-in type decks. So I think one thing that James is probably really rooting for is Stephen Phillips to win his match against Jacob Wilson, because on that side of the bracket, Jacob Wilson is the only player, along with Owen Turtenwald, who have a higher seed than James. And obviously, being on the play with his White Weenie deck is very, very important. So if God forbid Owen loses this game, and Jacob Wilson loses his match, James Redmond will be on the play for the remainder of this top 8. So obviously James has a lot vested in the outcome of those matches. But yeah, I agree with you. Boros, you think that having to contend against a deck like Mono Blue with all these problematic cards like Master Veils and Frostburn Weird and Tidebinder Mage. But yep, James manages to defeat the Mono Blue opponent and is going to move on to one of the blue-white control decks.
Yeah, I was talking with Jacob Wilson about the matchup, and he would say that White Weenie he thinks is one of the most difficult matchups right now for blue-white control. So certainly not a spot he would want to be in. And that control mirror, by the way, is our backup match if this match finishes, and there is still game left in the control mirror, then we'll switch over to that, which I have a slight feeling that the control mirror won't be over yet.
Yeah, they're still in game 1, and those matches, especially Jacob Wilson's deck, he's playing the Cuneo version of Mono Blue White, and that deck doesn't have a lot of win conditions. It's especially in the mirror, its gameplay is usually just to draw, cast Elixir, and then put my graveyard back into my library, and then eventually deck you.
No, and actually Stephen Phillips is playing the exact same deck with 2 counterflux.
Oh, okay.
So that's so it's no one is trying to win the game.
Yeah, so he's basically just splashing red for counterflux and maybe some sideboard cards like Assemble the Legion, perhaps, or
for third counterflux.
Okay, so a very slight splash of red for
wait. One shock.
Okay.
All right, so there's a 4th red card.
So we're on to game 3 here. Owen Turtenwald on the play just has a swamp. Tim Rivera does lead with a Thoughtseize again, revealing a hand of Night Veil Spectre, Underworld Connection, Dark Betrayal, and a Pack Rat along with 2 other swamps.
So this is a near ideal hand for Owen if you look at it. He has the Pack Rat, he has the Underworld Connections, he has an answer to an opponent's Pack Rat, and he has a Night Veil Spectre.
Yeah. The only way this hand would be better would be if the Dark Betrayal or Night Veil Spectre were a Thoughtseize.
Right, because then he could Thoughtseize the Thoughtseize.
So Owen just draws a swamp for the turn, has to pass back.
All right, we'll see from Rivera.
If Rivera does have a Pack Rat, he can't really cast it because of the Dark Betrayal.
All right, he's going to go ahead and duress away the Underworld connection. So Rivera picking apart Owen's hand, really negating a lot of the power that it had there.
So let's see if Night Veil Spectre can come down, because that's basically the last power card that Owen has left in his hand. If does Tim have an answer for it?
Yeah,
or is
can
it
he
gonna
kill
hit?
spell it? He's got Night Veil Spectre of his own,
All right.
but Rivera knows this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
He saw the Dark Betrayal in Owen's hand.
Good news for Owen. He gets a hit off the Night Veil Spectre. Let's see if he can get some action going. It's a duress, so good hit there. And
He's all lands. Okay.
So good news for Owen. Despite getting his hand picked apart, Tim Rivera doesn't have a lot going on his side of the board.
And what a draw for Tim. It is Dark Betrayal right off the empty, into the empty hand, and that will take care of Night Veil Spectre.
And he has a temple that can come down and scry and fix his draw a little bit more. That card goes to the bottom of his library. And Owen, let's see if Owen can draw some action. It's just another land, so now Grey Merch is going to just come down and drain him for 2 and give him a body to attack with. But Tim's still very much in this game.
Yeah, Owen's last card is just a Devour Flesh, so despite having the Pack Rat, having the Underworld connections, and having the Night Veil Spectre, we see that Tim has managed to take care of Owen's early threats and maybe even be ahead a little bit.
Yeah, but so far, despite Owen just drawing lands, Tim's not really drawing much either. So let's see. Owen draws yet another land. So now with just 2 lands.
Oh
and
my! And I was gonna say that's a pretty aggressive block. Tim goes for the double Mutavault block for Grey Merchant. All right, and so Owen went for the 2-for-1 with Devour Flesh. In response, Tim Rivera used the Hero's Downfall in his hand to take care of Grey Merchant so that he could keep 1 Mutavault.
So now both players just have lands in their hand, although Tim does have a Mutavault in play.
Now, interesting to note.
There we go. Underworld connections for Owen.
That's
an
huge.
actions card. So.
Tim did not make a land drop that turn, presumably because he wants to have Pack Rat fodder for the possible Pack Rat that he could draw.
Yep. So Tim draws a Night Veil Spectre. He's going to attack with Mutavault first. Night Veil Spectre can come down. That can help him out a little bit, but let's see. Owen is going to draw another 2 cards this turn. Activates Underworld Connections, draws a card for turn. Don't believe he has an answer, though.
Yeah, as I say, Underworld Connections draws 2 cards a turn. Night Veil Spectre does 2. So the question would be if Owen can find a removal spell before Night Veil Spectre starts gaining value, and he does not. More importantly, Tim has found a Pack Rat on the top of his deck.
So Pack Rat's going to come down here now. Owen, with no action, has to face down Night Veil Spectre and a Pack Rat.
Right, he's got a Grey Merchant, so that's one way to beat a Pack Rat army is if you can get devoted enough to black and Grey Merchant your opponent.
Yeah, Owen with nothing but a Thoughtseize and a Grey Merchant as action in his hand. He has 2 swamps.
Yeah, that's not going to be enough yet, and Tim's going to start creating threats very quickly.
Yeah, so here we're going to see a Pack Rat activation, and it looks like he should be able to activate for activate twice next turn if he wants to.
Yeah, he can also swing Mutavault too, and it didn't make Mutavault. Remember, Mutavault is a rat.
So yeah, he's just going to activate. Yep, he's going to activate Pack Rat to make it even bigger.
So he has a 2/4/4/2/2. That is 12 damage on the swing, plus a free card, which is a Hero's Downfall. It will knock Owen to 1. This could be it for our number 1 seed.
Owen does have a Grey Merchant in his hand, so he can gain some life and then draw a card with Underworld Connections. But let's see here.
And it's amazing just how fast the 1 Pack Rat draw turns into a lethal swing.
Yeah.
You know, you play it and like, oh, well, at least he hasn't made rats yet. But, you know, it does not take long until Pack Rats can take care of the whole board.
So Grey Merchant comes down, gains Owen 4 life, brings him to 5. Then he's going to go to 4. Draws another Grey Merchant, but it won't be enough.
He has the lands.
He has lands, Thoughtseize in his hand, and extends the hand. Tim Rivera defeats the 1 seed Owen Turtenwald and the Mono Black Mirror. So Tim Rivera moves on to the top 4 to face either David Daniel or Alex Mukar in another Mono Black Mirror.
Yeah, and a really well played by Tim Rivera to being down the first game, looking bad in the second game, was able to rally, come back and win game 2, and then take the match in game 3. As you said before, Tim, a former World of Warcraft Worlds player, I believe, transitioning into Magic, and as you can see, transitioning in strength.
Yeah, he's
national champion.
He's a WoW national champion, so he's familiar with playing on the big stage. So moves on to the top 4, and let's see if he can navigate his way through another Mono Black Mirror being on the draw.
Right, he doesn't know his opponent yet, but he does know it's going to be the same matchup.
Yeah, and I think you kind of saw a great example in this game of why a lot of players don't enjoy playing the Mono Black Mirror, because it gets to a